Hi everyone, welcome to Youth Services Family Information Session on tuning into teens. Before I get into the details, I'm just waiting to hear from one of my lovely team members, Leah, just to make sure that we're working and we are live and that you can all see us. And we'll just give a couple of minutes to have a few more people enter the space. Beautiful. We just got our confirmation that you can all see us. That's great. All right. So welcome to our Tuning into Teens Family Information Session. It's great to see lots of attendees tonight. So welcome everybody. Firstly, I just wanted to let you all know that the session is recorded and Anthony will be presenting for us tonight. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us in the chat area. We have Rosie, our youth counsellor, and Elise, our youth development officer, who will be managing that space. And we'll either respond to your questions via the chat or we'll leave it to the end of the session where Anthony's going to stick around for an extra 15 minutes to answer any of your questions. We'll ensure that we'll read those questions, but we'll read them anonymously. So please don't hesitate to send through any questions that you have. So I would like to introduce our youth counsellor, Anthony Hurst. He has been around for a little while now and has been running the Tuning into Teens program for a few years within Wyndham. So before I continue blabbling on, I'm just going to leave it to Anthony and introduce you to him to take over. So there we go.
Thank you, G. Good evening, everybody. The first thing I'm going to try and do is share my PowerPoint slides for tonight. So let's see and double check that this is going to work. Okay. So, G, can you see my slides on the screen? Fingers crossed.
Yes, we sure can, Anthony.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay, so before I get into stuff for tonight, we are going to be talking about tuning into teens tonight, and I imagine that we've got probably a few groups of people with us here tonight. Now, one group of people I think have probably had an absolutely massive day, are tired, are exhausted, and just sort of want to sit back and listen to this content. And that is completely fine. So welcome, thanks for joining, and you are very, very welcome to do that. There is probably going to be some people of another group here tonight that probably also have had very massive days, but are wanting to take some notes or, you know, wanting to get a little bit more out of today and pick up on some of the extra little bits that we throw out. So what I'll get you to do now, if that's you, I'll get you just to maybe find a pen and a piece of paper, because there will be things that I'll throw out throughout the night. I might name a particular author or something like that, and you can write them down and you'll be able to look into some of the work that they do after this presentation finishes. But for those of you who are not wanting to do that, that's completely fine as well. Okay. So just to begin, we'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. So we gather here today acknowledging the traditional custodians on which Wyndham Council sits. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, culture, knowledge and the hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We must remember that beneath this building, this land is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. And I'm aware that we're actually meeting online tonight, which means that some of us will be on Wyndham land and some of us will be from other areas. So I'd just like to acknowledge as well the traditional owners of the lands on which each person here is joining us tonight as well. So one way that we start off a lot of our presentations is that we acknowledge that some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today could be tricky for a whole range of different reasons. So it's possible that this presentation might bring up some stuff for you that might lead you to want to reach out and get some additional support. So particularly for our parents that have their pen and paper with them, it would be a great idea just to write down the number for Kids Helpline here. For any young people that are needing assistance, they can always ring that number. And Lifeline for us adults, that if we're ever needing somebody to talk to, that we can call that number too. Okay, so our purpose for today, we are going to be talking a little bit about the Tuning Into Teens program, but my main goal for today is to give you a bit of an understanding as to what are some of the different parenting styles that all of us use, and what are some ways that we can use that information to help us respond to our young people better. The way that we one of the ways in which we practice these learnings is we have a series of quotes that we're going to draw on throughout this presentation. So this first quote here is, "Every young person needs an adult that they can disappoint." And one of the reasons why we talk about this being really important is because our young people need to know that we think they are the best thing since sliced bread. And the reason for that is because they need to know that there is a secure person who has that really strong, unconditional, positive regard that's not going to be happy with their behaviour all of the time, but for the most part thinks that they're a pretty good and well-to-do person. And what we know is that when young people have an adult like that in their lives, they tend to strive to meet that standard. And so this really, for me, highlights each and every day we need to think about how is it that we can show that we are that person for the young people in our lives. Okay, so for a bit of an outline of today, we're going to touch briefly on emotions and emotional intelligence. So what are emotions? What is emotional intelligence? Basically, why are we here today? So I'm going to give you a bit of a rationale as to why it's really important for us to think about some of this stuff. The next thing I'm going to go into is some of the different parenting styles. So these different styles have emerged from a series of research that has been done. And basically what they've found is all of us use all four of these parenting styles, but that we tend to have a preferred one. And our main goal from the program is that we transition ourselves from whatever it was that our preferred style was previously. I know for mine, and you'll get to know this throughout the presentation, I'm sure, but my preferred style, does sometimes sit in that emotion dismissive, and I'll tell you more about what that is soon. But how it is that we can transition that to more of an emotion coaching one. And that's basically this emotion coaching parenting style is what the whole program is about. After we've gone through those styles, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Tuning Into Teens program. So what can you expect from it? What are you going to be doing in it? And then we're going to have some time at the end, as G mentioned, where we can ask some questions. So to kick ourselves off, one thing that I want us to start thinking about is that emotions are not good and bad. So often when we're talking with friends, with family, whoever it might be, we have this way, oh, how are you feeling? Or, I'm feeling bad, or I'm feeling good. We have these emotions that we tend to call the good emotions. And what we mean by the good emotions is the ones that maybe feel pleasant in our bodies. They're comfortable emotions. So they might be things like excitement or joy, or optimism or anticipation. So emotional experiences that feel good for us when we feel them. The other side of that coin is that we then tend to have these other emotions that we tend to refer to as bad. And these are ones that feel unpleasant in our body. So they're not comfortable for us to experience. And they might be things like worry, sadness, and anger. And one of the key things here is that we need to transition from talking about emotions that are, good and bad, and move more towards talking about them as being pleasant and unpleasant. Now, the main reason for that is because pleasant and unpleasant, the meaning that sits under that is that it acknowledges that all emotions are important, and they are. So even the unpleasant emotions, the emotions that feel uncomfortable in our body, they have a really important purpose for us as well. So a really good example of that might be something like anger. So anger might come up for me when I feel like somebody has overstepped the mark. Now, sometimes my thinking brain may not be able to process all of that information, but I will know when I'm feeling angry. And so when I can understand that and tune into that, I can then realize that I'm feeling like somebody is going too far, somebody's overstepping the mark. And then I get to have a bit of a think about what are the actions I can take that are going to help me feel like that situation has been rectified, or I've been able to stand my ground in that particular way. The other thing that we know is that when we refer to emotions as being good or bad, it's almost like we need to get rid of all the bad things, right? So we need to get rid of worry, get rid of sadness, get rid of anger. And that also is not particularly true. So we don't necessarily want these emotions to not be there anymore, because they're really, really important. I often tell this story about how, this was many years ago before my time at Wyndham, but there was a job I had applied for, and it was one of those times where I was kind of going, oh, should I look at something else? Should I not? And so I'd looked at this job online and I'd put in an application for it, and I thought, that would be a cool job to have, but I didn't feel particularly married to it, or I must have this. And then after that I got an interview, and so went, oh yeah, good, and went and attended the interview. I thought it went pretty well. But again, was just, sort of not really married to the idea of this job. I was still pretty content in the job that I already had. And it wasn't until I got the phone call to say that I was not successful that I just went, oh, and started to actually feel a bit sad. And that was really interesting for me, because I couldn't understand why that was. But of course, I was able to then track back and go, okay, so I'm feeling sad right now. What's the purpose of sadness? Sadness, when something happens that makes me feel sad, it puts me into a space where I become quite reflective. And that's true for most of us. Often we'll isolate ourselves and pull ourselves away from a lot of the distractions and things going on in the world around us. We'll pull ourselves away and we'll give ourselves some time just to kind of think and reflect. And that was a really useful, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a fun time or an enjoyable time. It wasn't pleasant, but it was really useful, because what it got me realizing was that there was actually a part of that job that seemed really interesting for me and that I really wanted to do. And what that then got me thinking about was, okay, so if that's the kind of role that I want to end up in, now that I felt this sadness, I recognize that's a direction that I want to move into. And so knowing that, what are some of the steps I'm going to have to put in place, for that to happen for me next time? And so, I was able to then have a think about what might be some of the skills and experiences, for example, I might need in order to get a job like that in the future. So really, really key point here. We don't want to be talking about good and bad emotions anymore. We want to be talking about pleasant and unpleasant. And for our people at home who have their pens and paper, write that one down, that emotions are pleasant and unpleasant. They are not good and bad. What emotions are is they are information. So like I've explained to you in those past couple examples, me feeling those emotions, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant, give me great information as to what's going on for me at that time, and help me make decisions about where I need to go in my life and what I need to do. So when I'm feeling angry and feeling like someone's overstepped the mark, I then get to have a bit of a reflective time to go, okay, so how is it that I feel I could safely, responsibly and respectfully assert myself here. You know, when I'm feeling sad, I then sit in the space to go, right, so how is it that I'm going to be able to reflect on what it is that I'm missing and make sure that I'm able to get that in other areas of my life and work towards that. So emotions are information, and that's another really good one to write down. Emotional intelligence, therefore, is sort of like this big concept that has a few key skills that sit underneath it. So one of the key skills of emotional intelligence is to be able to identify and understand our own emotions as well as the emotions of other people. And that probably makes a bit of sense, doesn't it? Because if I can't understand and identify what I'm feeling and why, it is going to be very hard for me to make some of those decisions, like how and when to respond, what to do in response to these emotions and how to manage them. Understanding other people's emotions and being able to respond with empathy. So, you know, there's this idea here that once we're able to identify what's going on for other people, we're able to do this thing called empathy, which is put ourselves in their shoes and think about what that experience might be like for them, and then show up for them in a particular way by being supportive, however that might look. So that could be saying something in particular, it could be doing something for that person, and whatever else might follow. Using emotional information to guide our thinking and behaviour. I've given you a few examples of this, but I think that this is really important. So, you know, one of the examples I tend to give here would be, you know, perhaps you're in a work meeting and someone at the table has taken credit for some work that you've done, all right? Now, the emotion that might come up there might be anger, frustration, all kinds of things like that. And so it's not simply enough for us to be able to identify and understand our emotions, yeah? Because I might understand and identify that and go, oh, yeah, anger, frustration, aggression, great, understand it, great, launch across the table and spear tackle them to the ground. No, that's not going to work, right? So it's not simply enough for us to identify and understand our emotions. What we need to be able to do is use that emotional information to guide our thinking and behavior. So what might go on for someone who is emotionally intelligent in that moment is they would probably be feeling all of that frustration and aggression, you know, that I mentioned just then, but they might think to themselves, okay, Anthony, if I create a big scene here, I'm not going to be able to regulate myself. I'm probably going to say some things that I don't mean. I'm probably going to look like a really aggressive person. And one of the lines that my supervisor has always told me, which I love and I think is so applicable, is that when anger enters the room, the problem goes away and your anger becomes the problem. So for our people following at home, that might be another really good one to write. And what that really speaks to is when we become really escalated and, you know, aggressive or frustrated, what can sometimes happen is that the issue that we're angry about all of a sudden takes a back seat, and all the people around us can focus on is the frustration that we're exhibiting, and that's what becomes the problem. So really important for us to think about, with anger in particular, how we can manage that so that we can communicate our message and our needs much more clearly. So I'll repeat that one for you again. It is when anger enters the room, the problem goes away and our anger becomes the problem. I nearly lost myself in the middle of that one, but I brought myself back. So using emotional information to guide our thinking and behavior. Okay, I'm bringing myself back. Can I just say, this is a very interesting webinar for me to run, because usually I have one of our other phenomenal Tuning Into Teens facilitators with me. And when I go off on my tangents, they bring me back in. And so I'm having to do that for myself tonight. So I'm staying strong. So using emotional information to guide our thinking and behavior. So I've given you that example of that person getting very frustrated in the work meeting. Now, what they might then do is they're going to go, right, so me getting all escalated in this meeting may not actually solve the problem. Even if I bring it up in front of everybody, this other person who's taken credit for my work is probably going to escalate and not admit to what's gone on, and it's probably just not going to end well. So Anthony, with his thinking brain on, goes, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this person aside after the meeting and just have a conversation with them about it and just say, hey, I noticed that you mentioned this in the meeting and I was feeling a bit uncomfortable about that because that was something that, I had done, and it almost sounded like you were suggesting that that was something that you did. The other thing that I might be doing for myself is I might notice how angry and how escalated I am, and make a conscious decision to wait until I have de-escalated and calmed down a bit before bringing that up, because it is very hard for us to use our thinking brain, which sits right here, when we are feeling very, very, very emotional. And that brings me to our last point here, which is managing how and when we express these emotions. There's this, and I think this is quite typical of examples, when you're in public and there's lots of people around. I definitely remember growing up, there were times where I would have done something that my mum was not happy with. And, she gave me this one, like, you just wait until we get home and we're going to have a talk about this, right? And so that was my mum just holding it together, holding the show together, being really calm and collected in the moment, knowing that, in front of the entire family, and Greek family, so big family, to address it in front of the whole family may not have been the best idea, because I might have become really embarrassed and really shamed and whatnot. So she's noticed all of her frustration, held it, and then said to me, wait until you get home. And that was one of the most distressing things my mum could have ever said to me. So why is it that I have just spoken to you about? Sorry, let me go back a step. So these different skills are what we generally refer to as emotional intelligence. Each of these different abilities come up with this general notion of emotional intelligence. Now, you are probably wondering, Anthony, why are you giving me a theory lesson here? This is why I'm giving you the theory lesson. So for our people at home who are taking notes, what I really recommend is that you take notes about this slide. Emotional intelligence develops as a result of three things. The first one... I didn't
get that. Could you try again?
Siri's jumping in. No, Siri. Emotional intelligence develops as a result of modeling of emotionally intelligent behavior. Now, what that might look like would be this idea that if I want the young person in my life to engage in emotionally intelligent behavior, which might be, that example I just gave you. So recognizing when I'm feeling angry and having a logical think about how's the best way for me to raise that issue. If I want my young people to be able to do this, I need to be doing it myself, okay? This idea of role modeling is something that we are probably all very familiar with, but it is this idea that children learn how to manage their emotional experiences by looking at us adults, okay? So one of the reasons I'm talking to you about emotional intelligence is because if we are able to do this, then that means that our young people are going to learn how to do this. The second way that emotional intelligence develops is by reactions to our emotions. So if I am showing that I'm very, very anxious about something and someone responds to me by saying, oh my God, you're such a sook, right? Which I must say at times I have been guilty of doing. What message that sends to us is it's not okay for me to feel that way. It's not okay for me to express this. And then I develop a sense that this is not okay for me to express or talk about. So this is another way that our emotional intelligence develops, because if I start going, oh no, it's not okay for me to feel that way, what am I doing? I'm pushing down, pushing down, pushing down, pushing down. Now, when I do that, how good am I going to be at identifying how I'm feeling if I'm pushing down, pushing down, pushing down, pushing down? I presume you guessed correctly, which is not very good at all. So if I'm pushing down everything about how I'm feeling. I'm not going to be very good at identifying how I'm feeling. What that then means is I will often be reacting to things in ways that I don't have control over, because I don't know how I'm feeling and I can't choose how to respond. So how we react to young people's emotions is going to be very important. The last one is discussions about emotions. Now, this is very interesting, because how often is it that we just sit down and we talk about emotions and how we handle them? This is probably not something that happens enough. Often, maybe if someone's really angry or really escalated or, really overtly emotional, we might try and engage in some sort of a conversation about emotion. But these are conversations that we need to be having all the time. So what sort of framing do we have around that? Is it that it is okay for us to feel however it is that we feel? Is it that it's okay to look like you're enjoying yourself and having a good time, but it's not okay for you to feel angry or feel sad or feel worried or things like that? So these are the three ways in which emotional intelligence develops. And for our parents at home taking notes, what I would write is that us adults are the key people that are responsible for all three of these things with young people. We are the role models, we are the people reacting, and we are the people having or not having the discussions. So this is part of the reason why we do this Tuning Into Teens program with adults, because what we know is that through this, adults are in a perfect position to be building the emotional intelligence of children. And the other reason that this is brilliant is because often we hear from parents or caregivers or family members, they say to us, oh, well, I want this particular young person, such and such, I want them to be getting some mental health support or things like that, but they're not really wanting to access it. And that can be a really big struggle for families, when it's recognised that there's something going on for the child, but the child's not wanting to engage in other supports. And again, that's another really great reason why programs like this is so important, because actually us as parents and adults and carers and supportive family members, if we start doing this work, we are able to see the knock-on effects with our young people. I'm not going to go through these in extreme detail, but what I want you to see here is that there is the Tuning Into Teens program that has shown to have a whole range of different benefits for the young people whose adults participate in it. So we see fewer oppositional and problematic behaviours, better academic achievement, stronger peer relationships, better ways to self-regulate and self-soothe. There's a whole range of benefits to it. For our parents that are taking notes, you might want to look up some of the research behind the Tuning Into Teens program. If you go on to tuningintokids.com.au, you'll be able to see some of the research that underpins it. But otherwise, you can just sit back and trust me that what I'm telling you is true, and that's completely fine too. Okay. I am going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, but I promise you it's going to be a brief history lesson. We have two lovely people here. Both of their surnames are Gottman. This is John and Julie. They are researchers and psychologists in America. And basically what they did was they were working with lots of families, lots of young people, and they had this question: why is it that these young people we're working with are doing well? They're able to regulate their emotions. They're able to have, strong and happy and positive relationships with adults in their life, as well as other young people, and there's very low family conflict. Why are these young people presenting in this way? And what they did was they asked a whole bunch of different questions of families. They asked the parents, when you were growing up, so they said to the parents, okay, when the parents were children, when they were growing up, how were their emotions responded to? So if you were angry or anxious or sad growing up, how was it that your parents responded to that? Did they have space for that? Were they, not open to you feeling that way? All of that sort of stuff. They asked them that about, sadness, worry, anger. They then also asked how these parents respond to their own children. And what they tended to find was that there were 4 main parenting styles that came through. We're going to talk about these in more detail. What we need to know, though, what's important to know, is that all of us do all 4 of these styles. Okay, so I've got them listed here, and like I said, we're going to go through them in just a moment, so I don't expect these to make any sense to you, but they are emotion dismissive, emotion disapproving, emotion permissive, and emotion coaching. Now, as I said, we all do all 4, but the research that the Gottmans did found that we all tend to have a preferred style that we do more often than the others. So we all have a preferred style. And what they found was that the parents who had a preference for the emotion coaching style tended to experience all of these high emotionally intelligent behaviors that we saw on that previous slide. And what we found there was that emotion coaching only needed to be done 30 to 40% of the time by one parent for these positive effects to be seen. Now, this is a very important line, so I'm going to repeat it. Emotion coaching only had to be done 30 to 40% of the time by one parent or adult to see the positive effects that we went through on the last slide. Now, why this is important is because this program, this model that we're going to teach you, you do not need to be doing it 100% of the time. This model, thankfully, acknowledges life is busy, life is difficult, and life is tricky. It is especially difficult, busy, and tricky when there are teens in the family. And what this is telling us is that this only needs to be done 30 to 40% of the time by one parent. And our people at home that are taking notes, this is very important to take a note on. This is something that we remind ourselves of, and this is something that we tell ourselves on all of those occasions where we happen to do something other than emotion coaching. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to go through the 4 different styles that we have. The first one is emotion dismissive, and this is the just get over it approach. This is my bread and butter. And really what this is, whatever it is, it's kind of this idea of stop complaining, just get on with it, just get over it. I do need to admit that this is an approach that I have defaulted to, particularly when I'm under stress. This is something that I default to myself. So this particular style involves avoiding and dismissing emotion. So, if your child's feeling anxious, it's sort of like, oh, just get on with it. Just get it done. Don't worry. Stop stressing. Stressing isn't going to help. All of these kinds of comments that just come way too easy for me. Often, we'll be kind of going, well, there's no reason to feel this way. There's no reason to be thinking this way or acting this way or whatever it might be. And what then tends to happen is that there are these missed opportunities to connect. So I'm going to try see if there's a video that we can play here, and let's see if it works.
Hello?
Cameron, babe, what's happening?
Very little.
How do you feel?
Shredded.
Is your mother in the room?
She's in Decatur. Unfortunately, she's not staying. Where are you?
I'm taking the day off. Now get dressed and come on over.
Can't, stupid. I'm sick.
That's all in your head. Come on over.
I feel like complete shit, Ferris. I can't go anywhere.
I'm sorry to hear that. Now come on over here and pick me up. anything good to do.
Okay. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. Now, for our parents playing at home who are taking the notes, please put Ferris Bueller's Day Off on your list. I believe it is on Netflix, but I can't confirm. That's probably going to be a good movie to watch, just because it's fantastic. But what we really saw, I think, in that video, and to anybody, so for anyone who hasn't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, first of all, go and watch it. But for anyone who hasn't, one of the brilliant things about this movie, I think, is it really picks up on this dismissive style where we have this one character, Cameron, who for the whole movie is feeling quite unwell, and no one really seems to tune into it. So everyone just kind of seems to have this thing of, yeah, just get over it. That's all right, Cameron. Come pick us up. Oh, Cameron, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. And it's very interesting because often we think that when we dismiss the emotional experiences, people are going to feel better. But what we actually see happen in this movie, and indeed what happens in the real world as well, is that when we dismiss a lot of emotional experiences, it doesn't actually make things better. The next style, so have a think about whether that style applies to you. I know it certainly does for me. The next style is emotion permissive. So this is the anything goes style. When we're doing this style, we've got so much empathy, we are being so lovely and so kind, but there are no limits and there are no guidance. So this style also isn't the most helpful for our young people either, because often young people will really struggle to regulate their emotions when this style is at play. And we've got another video for this one as well.
Just want you to know, if you need anything, don't be shy, okay? There are no rules in this house. I'm not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom. Right, Regina? Please stop talking. Okay. I'm gonna make you girls a hump day treat. This is your room? It was my parents' room, but I made them trade me.
Okay, so that clip was from Mean Girls, and I think what we see happen in this particular movie, for those of you who have seen it, again, if you haven't, highly recommend. But we see this parent who's kind of like, yes, 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 right to absolutely everything. And there's really no boundaries, there's no rules. And one of the things that we see happen there, if we think about that main character there, Regina George, she really struggles to form positive relationships with a lot of the peers around her. So finds it really difficult to compromise, really difficult to see other people's perspectives and opinions. All of these skills that we know are essential for having different different relationships with friends and family members and whatnot. So that style also doesn't do the best job at responding to our teens. The last style that I'm going to tell you to try and avoid is disapproving. So this one's kind of like dismissive, but it's even a little bit worse. And this is you shouldn't feel that way. So what we then start to do is judge or criticize teens for the emotions that they feel, and good examples of this. I'm trying to think, what are some examples I've had? Oh, right. I think one of the classic examples of this would be, if your teen's maybe feeling, quite tired, lying down on the couch, something like that, and you ask them to do something, and maybe they go, "Oh, I'm too tired," right? Now, what is our gut response? Are you kidding me? What do you have to be tired about? Are you doing the cooking? Are you doing the cleaning? Are you possibly going to work? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing all the other things that I do to keep this household moving? Yeah. And I ask you to do this one thing and you're too tired. Right. So this is what the disapproving approach is, and often it comes out when we're in a state of exhaustion. And one of the things with this is what we miss out when we do this is it's very possible and indeed maybe even probable that there could be something going on for that teen who's lying on the couch. So, are they feeling, really sad maybe about something that's going on in their friendship group? Is there something bothering them? Is there something else that's sitting under this tiredness that's going on? And have we just ruined our opportunity to find out about it because we've become really critical and attacking of them? Now, that's not to say that we can't expect them to do chores and all the other different things that get the house moving and are required. But what we really don't want to do, we want to avoid the criticism wherever we can. And I believe there's a point on criticism that we will come to shortly. But this is the disapproving style. And yes, you are right. I have a video to show you on this one as well.
Can I help you? God, I wish. What on earth? You're not buying us a DSL.
Lorelei, this is Harvey's place.
I canceled the order, and it's not happening.
But Rory needs the internet for her school.
We have the internet.
Well, this is faster.
Well, we like our internet slow, okay? We can turn it on, walk around, do a little dance, make a sandwich. With DSL, there's no dancing, no walking, and we'd starve. It'd be all work and no play. Have you not seen The Shining, Mom?
What on earth are you talking about?
Also, there will be no cars, no parking spaces, and all the uniforms will be supplied by me, the mother. That's final. There will be no discussion.
You're being stubborn as usual.
No, Mom, I'm not being stubborn as usual. I'm being me, the same person who always needed to work out her own problems and take care of herself because that's the way I was born. That's how I am.
Florence, I'm dripping.
I appreciate what you have done for Rory in paying for her school. That will not be forgotten. You won't let it. But she is my daughter, and I decide how we live, not you.
Look at that face. That is one of my favorite still images from this entire presentation. And I think that face says absolutely everything that we need to know about this particular style. So for those of you who don't know, this clip is from Gilmore Girls. I may or may not have rewatched that entire show during isolation. Yes, keeping myself very productive. But hey, it brought us this clip, so can't complain too much. What I think is important to notice about this clip is that every time the disapproving comments come through, one of the key ones was, well, you're being stubborn as usual, right? When those disapproving critical comments come through, what we see is the escalation, 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 escalation. There is no resolution that comes through here. Things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. What this now brings us to is our final style, which is emotion coaching. And the first thing that you're going to notice about this one is that this tagline is the longest out of any of the ones that we look at, or that we've looked at over the previous slides. This is the one that I want you to be paying attention to. So for our parents playing from home with their pen and paper, I want you to write emotion coaching down. I want you to circle it because this is the one that we want you to be doing as often as you can. But remember, you only have to be doing it the 30 to 40% of the time. So what this one does is it is the empathy plus the boundaries and the limits. So that sounds really tough. I'm here to listen and we will figure it out. This is what differentiates this style from the others. The other styles are either only empathy, no boundaries, or only boundaries, no empathy. The emotion coaching is the empathy, but then also the boundaries and brings both of them together. So this is the one that we want you to be focusing on. This, one of our favorite lines, again, our parents from home, this is a great line to write down. All emotions are okay, but not all behaviors are okay. So it is okay for you to be angry at me. It is not okay for you to slam the door. It is okay for you to feel anxious, but it's not okay for you to stay home from school and not tell me, okay? This emotion coaching style has boundaries, but also has empathy. I get that this is really tricky for you. I'm here and we will figure it out. The other thing that it does So the impact of this is that our young people are better able to regulate their own emotions and are better at forming relationships with others when we use this style. So I've got another video for you here as well. And this is, I dare say, one of my favorite television shows of all time.
Why did you do this, Allie? This is terrible.
Oh, great!
This is Michael's giraffe. He's crying now. Why did you do this?
Cause.
Cause is not an answer.
Active listening.
Ray, that doesn't work.
It works. I just use it on the worst kids in the neighborhood.
Would you look at this? Look what she did.
Try it. Try it.
No, Ray.
I'll do it. You want me to do it?
No. Okay. Allie, let's talk about what you did.
I don't want to talk.
Are you feeling angry?
Reflect back.
You're angry.
Yes.
Okay. But it's not okay to rip up toys when we're angry.
Judgmental.
You are angry because
Because it used to be your toy.
oh,
Yes. I don't like Michael Jeffrey.
I see. You think that Mommy and Daddy pay too much attention to Michael and Jeffrey.
Ray, okay, I was handling this.
They get everything.
Right, and you're upset because we gave them your old giraffe.
I still liked it.
But you weren't playing with it.
But that doesn't matter, though, because it was still yours. And you're mad because we gave it to Michael without asking you, right?
Right.
Well, Mommy and Daddy made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes, right, Mommy?
Yes.
You feel better now, Allie?
Yes, can I have the giraffe?
Well, it's broken, honey.
I know, I want to try to fix it for Michael.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Daddy.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Can't believe it. It's pretty amazing. You did it.
Anything else need taken care of while I'm around here?
No.
What?
Okay, sorry, that last bit right at the end wasn't emotion coaching, but I just got too caught up enjoying myself. So that was a really good example that sort of showed the stepping through of these steps here. So what I now have on the screen are the 5 steps of emotion coaching. So for our parents taking notes, assuming your hand's not too sore, if it is, you are free to bow out at any point. But for our parents who are still going, you might want to write down these steps. So these are the steps of how we use the emotion coaching style. And the first part of it is that we become aware of the emotions that our young person is feeling. Now, that sounds quite intuitive, and I can tell you it's not. So often it can be really difficult for us to identify what it is our children are feeling, what it is our young people are feeling, when, why, and how. So the first step to being a really good emotion coach is being what we call an emotion detective. And what that means is actually having a lens of walking around your home and looking at the people in your home and thinking about how it is that you think they're feeling at that particular time. Thinking about what emotions might be sitting behind the behavior and the things that are going on. This is fantastic. Once we can do this, once we can notice emotions when they come up, we now have something to emotion coach. Beautiful. So after we've done the first step, the second step is to recognize the emotions as an opportunity to connect. Now, this more than anything is just a mental barrier, yeah? So in our head, what we need to do is we need to go, instead of going, oh my God, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Why is this going on? Why does this have to happen now after my very long day at work? You know, all of these kinds of things that we very fairly tell ourselves. What we have to do instead is go, right, this anger that's going on right now, this is a sign that they're needing me to connect with them. This is a sign that they're needing support. And when we can view the situation in a way that has empathy for them, it then helps these next steps go very, very easily. And it helps us avoid dismissing, avoid disapproving, and avoid being too permissive. So if we get step 2 right, it sets us up very well to not criticize, because even though we might find the situation that's going on quite difficult, we will be going, but knowing that they're needing for us to show up in that moment. After we've been able to do that, what we really want to do is listen and validate how they're feeling. Now, one of the best examples of this one is when your child comes home from school and they tell you that they got in trouble with one of the teachers, and they go, Mrs. Such and Such is blah 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 and blah 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 and this and that, right? Now, the first thing that we often do is we'll go, well, what did you say or do to Mrs. Such and Such, right? So we always take the other perspective first. Now, that's important to do, but I just want you to rethink the order on it, because what we want to do is sit with the emotional experience and validate the feelings first. So what you might do is you might say something instead like, that sounds really frustrating. They go, yeah, you know, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And the conversation keeps going. And then what you wait for is the, right? So there'll be this emotional release that often comes in the form of that noise. And that's the nervous system basically discharging some of that emotion out. And once that's been done, we know that we can then move into step 5. So one of the ways that we can help them discharge that emotion is to help them label the emotions that we're feeling. So that example I gave you of saying, gee, that sounds really frustrating, that's assisting our young people to label the emotions that they're feeling. Once we then have done all of this and we get what we can then do is start setting limits and problem solving. So at this point, that might be the time that we bring in and go, so what do you think it was like for Mrs. Such and Such when, you know, she was trying to teach the class and you kept trying to talk to your mates, right? That might be the time that we can bring in some of this stuff and start setting some of these limits and boundaries and helping solve the problem. The other thing, you know, the other thing that could sit here would be something like, sounds like your relationship with Mrs. Such and Such isn't the best at the moment. What do you think that you might need to do in order to help that improve? Or what sort of conversation do you think you could have with her to help get that relationship back on track? And that they might then come up with an idea to, you know, apologize or this or that. Now, I don't expect you to be able to know these steps off by heart. This is what the Tuning Into Teens program is for. And that's what I'm going to talk you through now. The reason I show you this is to just talk to you about what this style looks like. I don't expect you to walk away from this presentation knowing how to do this step by step. That's what the 8-session group is for that I'm about to talk to you in a moment. But what I want you to think about is these different styles that we've spoken about so far. Which are those ones that you think you tend to do from time to time? And are there some strategies that you can put in place for yourself to help you do some things that sit a little bit more in this category? What I'm going to do is now skip through these next few slides. So these slides were just to go through each of those steps in a little bit more detail, but I'm mindful of the time and wanting to give us that 15 minutes of question time at the conclusion of the session for whoever would want to hang around. So one of the points I will be one of the last bits, I guess, of content for you is nothing before the but gets heard. Now, what we mean by this is when we say, look, I love you, but, you know, whatever it is that we were going to say. And so when we have to give feedback to people, a really nice strategy that we can implement is to separate those sentences out. So don't do that, oh, look, you know, I know that you work really hard, but I know that you, you know, mean well, but what we do is we recommend separating those sentences out. So what this might be like is, I know that most of the time you get your homework done, right? And we'll sit with that, for example, and they might go, yeah, you know, but this time was a bit, you know, and you have a bit of a conversation around that. Backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And then after that, you might say something to the effect of, what I'm also needing, though, is for you to make sure that you're getting it in on time, every time. And what we see happen there is the person is able to hear, the young person is able to hear and accept the compliment that we give, but then also hear the tough bit of feedback that we've got to give. Because something that we get told quite often in our Tuning Into Teens program is, but I give my child compliments all the time. I tell them all the time that they're doing good, but I also have to let them know when they're not. And these parents are spot on. What we recommend is this simple strategy of separating the two sentences out into two separate bits so that both bits get heard. Okay. So what is the Tuning Into Teens program? What is important to know is that at Wyndham Youth Services, we run the Tuning Into Teens program very different to anywhere else that runs it. We run it as 8 sessions instead of 6. These sessions are 2 hours long and they run weekly. So we do an extra 4 hours than any other service that I'm aware of in the area. The reason we do that is because we use that little bit of extra time. We break it up into a little bit of extra time into each week so that we can actually talk about what's going on in your home. So our parents come to the group and they tell us all the different kinds of things that are going on at home, all the really tricky situations that they're facing. And then we as the Tuning Into Teens facilitators and the entire group workshop those and go, right, that actually sounds really, really tricky. Let's come up with some ideas around what we might be able to do in line with emotion coaching. Our groups are limited to 8 to 12. We are delivering the groups online at the moment though, so we tend to have less than 12 in the group because on Microsoft Teams when we run it, we like to be able to see everybody's faces. We do cover a range of topics around emotions that are listed there. And the way that the program is taught is we have a whole bunch of different handouts. So we do skills practice, we teach some content like we have tonight, and then we also have some take-home exercises that you can work on as well to get the most out of your learning. What now? So we have two what nows. The first one is that you can express interest in joining one of our Tuning Into Teens programs if you feel like you want to know more about some of the stuff that we spoke about today. The way in which you do that is sending an email to the email address that we have here. And I have on good authority that I believe that's going to be posted in the chat of our webinar as well. So you can email us there and let us know that you're expressing interest into our 8-week group. Now, the reason I say express interest instead of sign directly up is because our groups are very, very, very popular. We recently have been running 2 consecutive groups at a time, due to some of the demand that we've had. And so what we do is we get expressions of interest and then we start contacting people on the list in order to let them know the groups that we've got coming up. Usually these run each term. However, I can think, I think we've got a couple of spaces left in our upcoming groups next term, but again, from the wait list that we already have, those a lot of those spots have been filled. So if you are interested, we encourage you to send us an email there and express interest, and we can put you onto a wait list and let you know when those opportunities arrive. And the next one, the next thing is, which I believe is another link that will be sent in the group chat. We have another 1-hour session running next week, which is all around the neuroscience of resilience that we call building brain fitness. And that'll be running at the same time next Tuesday night. There's another link that you'll have to sign up for, just like you signed up for this one. If you're interested in that, we will catch you next Tuesday as well. Other than that, I made it. 7:29 G, I made it. So I have very, very, very significant issues keeping to the clock. So it's a bit of a running joke in the group that whenever I have to present independently, it's something that I've got to keep my eye on. So our whole team, I'm sure, is cheering in the background that I managed to do it. With this bit now, G, I forgot what we said.
We were definitely cheering you on for being on time, which is great. Just letting you know, we have one question so far, and I'll read this one out to you. So the question is, and I just want to note that Elise, one of our facilitators, did respond privately, but I thought it's a good opportunity, and it might be another question that other parents have. Yes. For you to also. So the question is, how can we identify when the expectations on what we're asking them to do are really above their capacity?
Yeah, this is a really, really good question. So thank you to the person that asked that. And I agree, Jay. I think that's a question that a lot of our parents have as well. So one of the things that I think can often work really well is to have a conversation about it. We have this thing that we talk about in our Tuning Into Teens program, which we call talking about the talk. And this strategy applies to so many different situations, but really comes to the point of, if something I asked you to do, you were really struggling with, how would I know that? What would I see you doing? What would I notice happening for you? How do you think you'd be able to communicate that to me? And how is it that we could have some conversations around this? And we see this happening in lots and lots of different ways, where having the pre-talk, we don't often do this. Yeah, it's almost like, what are our rules for engagement? So if you have a bit of it, so almost sitting down with our teen and saying, so if there's a problem that you have with some of the rules that we have in this home, how is it, do you think, that we would be able to have a conversation about that respectfully? How is it? Do we have almost like a team meeting where everyone from the family comes together and we have a conversation about this? Is there a way that you could approach, myself or the other parent or adult in the home to have a chat about it? What are really our mechanisms of how we determine what's working and not working? And often, I think, time and time again, what stands the test of time is asking the question. So often asking to say, look, I'm noticing that, the chores that we're setting aren't getting done. And I'm just really curious as to what might be getting in the way. So asking in a really open way, not criticizing or anything like that, and just having, look, I'm wondering, what is it? Is it that you're struggling with time management? Is it that you're forgetting to do it? Is it that the tasks seem too difficult? Is it something completely else altogether? Like to have some of those conversations, I think, can be really, really handy, because it's not an exact science. So you're not gonna get everything right all of the time. And so what we find helps the most is when we have a bit of a process of how we talk about the tough stuff, how we're going to talk about things that aren't working. That can often really, really help in all aspects, I think, of the parent or caregiver-child relationship.
Thank you, Anthony. I have another question.
Oh, lovely.
Hi, how can I get back into a good relationship with teenage daughter after long separation due to some misunderstandings? Thanks. Anthony, before you get into answering this one, I really feel the need to share this because I think and you're probably thinking of the same person that I am. We had a wonderful parent who was in a really similar situation and joined our group and did the 8-week program with us. Following from that, we did some family sessions with that parent, one-on-one sessions, specifically around tuning into teens and around that parent's individual circumstances. And I'm really happy to report that after 3 sessions following from the program, that parent's relationship improved significantly with their daughter. And I can report that they're doing really well. And a year on, this parent is still coming back to us once in a while and just having a one-off session here and there just to check in with us, but also just get some of that additional advice with any issues that are coming up. So I would really recommend that you join the program to the person who asked that question. And Anthony, I'll leave you to respond to the rest of that.
Gee, you read my mind. Goodness, I miss working with you. Absolutely, and that was the exact same thing that came to mind for me, that particular parent. The other thing I would add to that is I think a big part of that journey for them was being able to tolerate and manage the rejection coming from their child. So they were putting out, you know, lifelines and the olive branch constantly, and the child was shutting it down constantly. It was like really wearing down, I think, the child's armor that had been put up, I think, was really key there. But this parent was getting rejected, getting shut down, but kept showing up, and until it reached the point that the child obviously felt safe. And felt that this parent was reliable and was someone they could trust. And then slowly that relationship began to improve. So I think, which again is something that we talk about in the program, I think managing rejection is a really big one there. And being able to, yeah, just sort of tolerate all those times that you get shot down.
Thank you, Anthony. There's just a couple more questions that I'll respond to. So one of the questions is, do these run in the evening? Yes, absolutely they do. Often they're from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if you want to inquire about the program dates and times, please send us an email to tuningintoteens@wyndham.vic.gov.au and we can give you more information. Also, another question was, do we get a copy of the slides? You're very welcome to send us an email again to that email address. And we'll see what we can do in terms of the slides. Another person has asked, will there be face-to-face classes? We miss doing our program face-to-face. So as soon as we are able to resume, we will. And if there's any changes to do face-to-face classes, which we're hoping is soon, then we would notify you. You just got to express your interest with us and we'll keep you in the loop. For now, however, it will be online. So another question, Anthony, for you, how to practice some strategies to improve the communication with my teens?
Yeah, so how to put into practice some of these strategies. I think that's a really good question. And a big part of it is I'm under no illusions that I think a 1-hour session is not going to be the be all and end all for this. So I want to be really clear. I don't expect anyone to be walking away from this going, right, I've got it all down pat, got it all nailed perfectly, know exactly what to do. But of course, hopefully there are some key things that you've picked up from this session that you're going to find useful. To be honest with you, and I hope this doesn't sound like too much of a cop-out, but I honestly, I think that what works with the strategies is when they're applied week in and week out. And I think a really great way to do that is by signing up to our program, because we get to meet with all of you for 2 full hours every week for 8 weeks. And we get to talk through all of these strategies, all of these ideas, all of these different things. And the beautiful thing about it is you all come back to us and go, well, this is where your model doesn't work, right? And you go, this is where it went wrong. You know, this is where it doesn't happen. And then we go, great. What we break it down and then we go, okay, we think that maybe this bit needs to shift or this bit needs to change. And we all work together to sort of help workshop, and you go back and try out those things. So I think signing up to the group is a really good idea. What I would say though, is that strategies with young people take time. Okay, so it's not about doing it once and having them not respond and going, okay, well, that didn't work. What we know is that young people and children thrive on predictability. So you need to be prepared. If there's a strategy that you want to put in place, you need to be prepared to be doing it, to be thinking it's having no effect, but to continue putting yourself out there and doing it. That kind of being able to tolerate the rejection we spoke about a little bit earlier, and really, sort of keep being available and doing it until they start to think that they start to believe that they can rely on you to do this, and that allows them to open up and trust you. So I think that being able to continue implementing and keep trying, I think, is one of the key things there.
Thank you, Anthony. Just one last question that we can fit in for tonight's session, and that is, how do we instill confidence into our teens? Or is it simply creating a shared construct of ideas you both give to prepare for most situations?
Well, can you repeat that one more time, G?
Yeah. So
ADHD. I find it hard to.
How do we instill confidence into our teens? And the next part to that was, is it simply creating a shared construct of ideas you both give to prepare for most situations?
Yeah, so how do we instill confidence? I think there's so many different ways that we can go about doing that, and I think that idea that you've given right there is also great. There was an image that flashed in my mind as that question got asked, and what it made me think about was, I think what instills confidence is when your young person goes out there and gives things a go. And I don't know, I get this image in my head of them looking back to you and you're going, you've got this. And I think that for our young people, how they develop confidence and become confident starts with them knowing that we feel confident in them. So us not rushing around to do absolutely everything for them, assuming they're going to struggle or assuming they need it. Telling them, hey, I can help you out with this, but I want you to ask me if you want that help. Otherwise, look, I think you're going to do a great job of this, but if you need anything, let me know. So always communicating that belief, I think, and that faith that they've got this, that they can handle it. And one of the reasons that's so important is because for the majority of the big decisions and events in their life, the ones where there might be danger or other things involved, if we think about peer pressure, you're probably not going to be there. So what we really want is for them to feel that you believe in them, because when you believe in them, they'll start to believe in themselves. And when they're in tricky situations, they're going to be able to know that they can confidently make decisions to keep themselves safe, confidently make decisions that take them in the direction of, the shared values that you guys have spoken about, and all of that sort of stuff there.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. The other question is, what are your suggestions when your teen gets stuck?
Gets stuck. Okay. So I'm thinking about, I'm wondering if I've understood the question, but maybe getting stuck in terms of how to solve a problem.
Potentially, or maybe could be stuck with schooling or just stuck with a particular situation.
Right. So, okay. So if it's maybe, yes, stuck and not really too sure where to go, one of the things that I always like to do, and I actually do this with a lot of my friends, because you know what? It cuts out a lot of the guesswork and it just makes it really easy. When friends of mine come to me with problems or things like that, one of the first things I'll say to them is I go, great, just to quickly check in, are you wanting to vent to me, or are you wanting me to help you to come up with a solution? Now, we may not say it as frankly as that with some of our teens, or, depending on your relationship, you might. But I think that that's a really nice way to sort of think about things, that when people come to us with problems, I always think everyone comes to me because they want me to help them give them a solution. Yeah, that's what goes on in my head. what I find in reality is when I ask the question, people don't always want a solution from me. They often just want me to listen. And I think that one of the things that we saw from that Everybody Loves Raymond video is that the child will actually often come up, or the child or young person will come up with a solution themselves of what they think they need to do. And so if we can just sit with them and going, yeah, that does sound really tough. That does sound, that is really frustrating your friends have done that, because I know how much of a good friend you are to them and I know how much you care about them. Or that does sound really annoying that, that happened to you at school, or that your teacher did this, or, whatever it is. Often they're going to be able to come up with their own solutions. If they're not, a really good question to follow up would be, it could simply be, have you had any thoughts about what you might do here, or how you might fix this? And they might go, well, I don't know, I don't know what to do. And you might go, yeah, it's really tough sometimes in life, because sometimes you don't know what to do. Would it be helpful if I gave you some ideas about what you could do? And then wait for their response to that. If they say yes, give your ideas. If they say, no, actually, I want to think about it a bit more, or whatever it is, that can be really useful too. But I think getting permission to give your advice and suggestions is a really good idea, because I find when you get permission from someone to give ideas and suggestions, they are much more receptive to the feedback that you have to offer. Hopefully I understood that question correctly.
Thank you, Anthony. We have had lots and lots of questions, and our facilitators and myself are busily responding to them all. So some of the questions have been around, are there programs for my young person who might want to talk about their emotions with their peers? And what I would suggest for that is that we do have youth programs that are available at Point Cook Youth Services, at Manor Lakes, at Tarneet, at the community centres, and also at the Youth Resource Centre, where we have programs such as Girls' Night or Guys' Night. We actually have a lot of programs that young people can be a part of, and not only have a chat to our youth workers, but also talk to their peers in that space. If you'd like more information about our programs, I'm just going to post the link now to send that through to you guys. And we also have online programs that are available currently, such as Girls' Night. So you can send any inquiries through to us if you go to the Wyndham City webpage and then click on Youth Services. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions that I might have.
Gee, just while you're looking at that, the other thing I might just add as well is that I believe we're going to add this recording onto our website, won't we, G?
Yes.
Yeah, so one thing that we often say to our parents, parenting is really tough. And I think what really comes through in our parenting groups is that it's tough for everybody. So if you found this information session useful tonight, what can be really great is to reach out to other parents that you know and link them to the recording and say, look, this is something that I found really helpful because parenting is really tricky, because often parents can find it really hard sometimes to open up and talk about how difficult parenting is. And you can link them to this video if it's something that you found useful. If not, don't. But if you did find it useful, to link them to that, to sort of start opening up some of these conversations that people can talk about how tricky it can be for parents.
Yeah, beautiful. Anthony, there's so many questions that are coming through, but we've really run out of time. So I'm just really aware that there's lots of questions that are often get asked in our program. So, one of them is around how when my eldest child is annoying our youngest, how do we handle this? And so there's been some comments thanking you, Anthony, for the work that you've been doing. I just wanted to point out, I guess, that firstly, please do not hesitate to give us a call at the Youth Resource Centre. 83752346, I believe, testing my memory here, or please send us an email to the Tuning Into Teens email address. If you have those individual questions, the counselling team is available for one-on-one family consultations. We're really aware that, especially in these times, it can be really difficult to get support. And I think also living at home for more hours, because there's still a lot of us that are working from home, and there's some young people that are still studying from home too, that it can, increase issues within the family unit. So we really want to reach out to everybody that's here and just say, if you have any kind of individual questions or want to consult on a one-to-one basis, you can actually book in Anthony or one of our facilitators to have a chat about a particular situation. But what we would really encourage you to do is sign up to the program, because that's where we think that you would get the most benefit. And I can assure you, as a prior facilitator myself, that the parents who have been part of our program have really benefited a lot and have seen some significant changes, not only within their teens, but also within the family unit. So, yeah, Anthony, unless there's anything else you want to add before we finalise our session?
That is all from me.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate your time with us. There is a link that will be sent to you guys for a survey. We'd really appreciate if you could respond to that survey, because we want to make sure that everything that we're doing in tonight's session is right for you and is useful for you. And this is the first time that we've done a live event. Normally, we run these sessions out of our local libraries. So this is something that's brand new for us too, and we're really excited about it. We just want to make sure that that we're giving you the information that you need. So please send us the feedback that you have as well, either by completing the survey, which will get sent to you, or just send us an email. We're very happy to respond to that as well. So I'll end it there. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll hopefully see you in our future programs.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.